Ümit üzme aziz xalqim, ümit üzme ey ana yurt. Biz atlandık bu küreşke, o yıl taştak uyuşup. Allah verse bu nusretni, bizgilerimiz sep bulup. Zalimlarni yığlatgudek, Uyghurs gibi küçlük bulup. Lepildeydi asminanda, göz çaknitip şu günü. Ay yıldızlık gök bayrağım, ey ana makam. Ay yıldızlık gök bayrağım, Şerqi Türkistan.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. Welcome to another session we have. Today was a spontaneous sort of session I wanted to get through because there's been a lot going on in Twitter, talking about how the Uyghur situation is fake. It's America's propaganda against China. China is doing so well. China is, uplifting itself, and America's just jealous. Anyway, I've got my dear friend, my dear brother Subboor joining with me today to discuss some of these issues. I'd like to welcome brother Subboor first. How are you, brother? Assalamu alaikum.
Alhamdulillah, I'm fine. Just saw you, I think, 2 days ago in person. So it's really nice being back and seeing you and the work that you're doing, mashallah.
Brothers and sisters, brother Subboor made it out to Istanbul. We met just briefly for a few hours. We got some really good work done. It was really productive. As you can see, he's wearing the Uyghur doppa, my gift to him, inshallah. Just briefly, you were here for a couple of days. Before we get into the gist of things, what did you do in Istanbul after?
After the filming of Gulbahar, and what's the other sister's name? I've forgotten her name.
Parida,
yeah. Right? So after filming them, I went to Hagia Sophia, as you do. I also went to, where was it? Oh, Topkapi. I went Topkapi. I went there. And what was really interesting, actually, was, something that you said about Turkic language, that the Turkish that's spoken in Turkey is actually still quite authentic. Yeah. And when I was going through the Topkapi Palace and we were going through the paintings and everything, it's very interesting actually that the earlier Ottomans, they looked very Turkic. They actually looked very Uyghur. They looked very Central Asian, like Uzbek, Tajik. And then later on, you actually see them, they look very different with the later on sultans. But the earlier ones, they're just almost exactly the same as the Uyghurs today. And that, I guess, is their history, right? Before they started mixing with the Europeans.
Yeah, you're exactly right. If you look at some of the old sultans, they are more Asian looking, definitely. So you're back in. It was a very short trip. Hopefully you get to do another one where it's a bit longer. Anyways, basically what I want to talk about was there's been a big shift recently. Not even a shift. It's recently China has been pressured to have independent investigators in, right, from the UN and other places, but they've refused, and instead they're using what I like to describe as white monkeys. And if people don't know what white monkeys are normally people that sell products, Chinese products, to either Chinese people or other people around the world. So they use a white person so that it makes it look more legitimate, it makes it look more real, and it makes it look more true. So now they're using random white tourists to say, look, I've been to quote unquote Xinjiang, I've cycled through there, I've talked to the people are living freely, they're going to the mosques and whatnot, and you can guess what else they say. There is no oppression, the Uyghur language is not being threatened, Islam is not being, destroyed. And so before we continue, I want to show you an example of this, and then we will take it from there.
So when you were in Xinjiang, what did you see there?
All of these things are quite apparent when you're living there or staying there. You can hear the call to prayer 4 or 5 times a day. You can see people going in and out of the mosques. This story that the practice of Islam is being wiped out is totally untrue. Now, if that story is untrue, what other stories are untrue? The story about the language being wiped out is totally untrue, because you can see the language everywhere. And that's the point that I've been making on Twitter, and probably the point that has caused me most of the problems that I have on Twitter, where people don't believe me. And my question to them is, well, when were you last there? And they haven't been, and I have. And so they'd rather believe a story that they see on CNN or BBC. They'd rather believe that than a guy who they think is making up the story. It's really gone a little bit crazy that many of them start saying things to me like, but you can't ride in Xinjiang. And my answer to that was, well, yes, you can. What restrictions did you find there? Well, apart from heavy security, no restrictions. But at no stage did anyone say you can't go there or you can't take pictures of this. And that, to me, was the start of when I realized that I had these pictures of Xinjiang that no one ever tried to stop me taking. No one told me we can't go down this road. No one told me that we can't stay here. But at no stage did they say, show us your photographs, show us your camera, let's see what you've got on there, delete these pictures. Not a single time. And when I tell people that, they say, well, that's not true, you're a liar. Well, no, I'm not. That's a fact.
Now, Brother Subboor, I mean, you've gotten onto the Uyghur issue for some time now. Based on what you've seen, based on your research, I mean, without even me or activists like me pushing you, I mean, try to be as objective as possible. What did you think of that video?
I mean, that just is exactly the sort of thing, and I believe he's being 100% honest here. That is exactly what you would expect from a state that can orchestrate this type of mantra. Because if China, if the communist atheist regime is going to let someone in, then they're going to make sure that that person leaves. And, you know, the term that you used earlier, which I actually Googled it, I've looked in Urban Dictionary, white monkey, right? It's actually a term being used for people in Asia whose only job is being basically white. And, you know, it's Asian people are more likely to believe what they say. And of course, somebody that is there and they see on the surface level, okay, people are walking around, okay, things are happening, okay, everything's fine. Well, what about the million officials that are like living in Chinese homes? Or what about the testimony of the concentration camp survivors? What about the pictures from the satellites? What about the fact that you have these orphanages where these Uyghur children are actually kept? What about the testimony of women that come out and who've actually got physical bruises and these types of things? What about the people that we can actually test and we can see that they've been given some particular type of medicine to control their mind? You've got all of this data, and then you get a person who basically says, no, none of this is all fake. It's all, nothing's there. Forget CNN, forget BBC, forget the fact that another white person, just like BBC and CNN, anytime they tried to pick up their camera, it was blocked, right? You had a face, you had a hand coming there. You see on camera these Uyghurs who are basically in these camps and they are singing and dancing and doing these types of things. You see the mosques empty, and we have testimonies that people are paid to actually go to the mosque. So are we supposed to, let's look at this probabilistically. We've got the option that this guy is right. So that's the first option. The second option is this guy has been duped. So the first option, if this guy is right, that means he is right and everybody else is wrong. The satellite images are doctored. The journalists that have gone there, they doctored the 70-year history here. Remember, that's older than him. The 70-year history, the fact that there was an independent nation until 1949, which was East Turkestan, which was taken over, and things that have been documented, such as the Baron Massacre, and all these things which even the Chinese government agrees that people were killed. So you'll have a case of mass amnesia, mass conspiracy, and a total lie being propagated, and the testimony of one man. Or the second option is that he's been duped. And of course, he's been duped. And the reason why he's been duped is, why is there a white guy going around saying, oh, you know, this is fine and that's fine? Well, firstly, it should be a Muslim like myself or you who goes there, who can actually go and say, Assalamu alaikum. Can I just ask, your child is 5 years old. Do they know the four quls? Oh, why don't they know the four quls? Well, they're not allowed in the mosque until the age of 10, or past the age of 10. Then it was some other age restriction. We'll be able to do these types of things quickly, and we can see this is all nonsense. So if anybody's to believe his story, right, it's tantamount to basically the moon landings are fake, or the Queen is a lizard, or, you know, this David Icke type stuff. And you'd have to be absolutely bonkers to actually believe what he's actually saying and believe that that is the actual state of affairs.
It's actually not him, though. It's actually not one. There are many like him who live in China, and they go, look, and they're not actually in what they refer to as Xinjiang or East Turkestan. They live in some other place like Shenzhen or Beijing, and they go, look, I can see Muslims, fellow Muslims, going to the mosque and all this. People have to understand the politics in East Turkestan and the rest of China are totally different. And we see this from time and time again. Are we going to take the testimony of some random tourist, or should we have officials? I mean, wouldn't it be easier for China? Like, if they let me go there and I see what that man saw, I'm willing to be a Chinese activist, a CCP activist. I'm willing to speak for the CCP. Like, wouldn't it just make things a lot easier? Now, all right, Western media, they are evil. Forget them, right? Forget even Chinese media. How about people like you and me? People I cannot call my loved ones. Explain that.
Yep.
How come every single person that I know, many of them, a good 95% of them, who have never spoken to a camera, who have never spoken to the media in their life, have at least one person in some sort of incarceration, whether it be in a concentration camp or a prison or forced labor. And these people have not. Why aren't you talking to them? How come these people are not being interviewed? How come I cannot go? How come I use WeChat? How come my loved ones can't even send me salam in WeChat? We just had the Eid for Muslims. How come I couldn't say Happy Eid, Eid al-Adha? They couldn't say the same thing to me. These basic things, if people could simply, and these guys who live in China, who are propagating for the CCP, can use Twitter, can use Facebook, can use Instagram, can use all of these things. How come my fellow Uyghur brothers and sisters who are still in East Turkestan cannot hop on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube? What's up with that? So, but the reason why I'm here talking to you, Subboor, about this, to address this, is because many of our Muslim brothers and sisters, and even just not even Muslim, just layman people, buy into this. It works. Yeah. It's really stupid. It's really dumb, but it works. This is why they do it.
Yeah. And I just want everybody to recognize something. When we look at independent people like this guy, his name is Sarapenza, right? This guy, he's lived in China. He has a Chinese wife. He's not paid by the CCP, right? He says the exact opposite. In fact, here is a Westerner who doesn't work for the CIA. He's just an independent vlogger. And he goes and he says the exact opposite to what the other gentleman said. Because at the end of the day, if China is going to be able to control the propaganda narrative, it can't simply do it by saying, oh, here's a Chinese official is saying everything's fine, therefore everything's fine. No, it's not going to work that way. What they basically have to do is they have to get a white person and say, look, everything's fine because this white guy says it's fine. Well, even if we're to believe that white guy, what about this other white person? What about this independent person that lives there and he actually says the exact same thing except in its opposite thing, to the point that if you hear some of the things that this guy speaks about, you would almost say that to the very, just like a jigsaw puzzle, everything the Uyghurs are saying, everything the Tibetans are saying, everything the Inner Mongolians are saying, and the Hong Kong people are saying, that is exactly corroborated by independent people like this. Now, I want something else to come at the front, right? When we look at the Nazi regime, and remember, comparing the Communist Party of China with the Nazi regime would be completely unfair, because the communists of China are professionals, and you could say that the Nazis were novices, right? So their propaganda machine was so effective that a large proportion of the German population did not believe Germany was wrong in World War II. They believed they were being attacked. They believed they were righteous. They didn't know all these Jewish people were being killed. And of course, you even had Hitler promoting this particular Jewish doctor who was known as the Honorable Jew. And he was a Jewish Nazi who basically was a physician. So you had all this elaborate propaganda. And you think in terms of killing, if China is far greater, far more brutal and merciless and ruthless than Nazi Germany, then you don't think they'll have their own Goebbels? You don't think they'll have their own PR scheme? They'll have an answer for everything. And this is the thing that we need to recognize. They're not sitting ducks. They have an active propaganda machine. How do they do it? China wants to cooperate. We want a win-win. We want the world to come together. China, I heard one particular Communist Party official, who he's not a Communist Party official, but he's like a cool dude living in America, or supposedly an entrepreneur. But the fact is, every single Chinese company is owned by the Chinese Communist Party. And he said, you know, China, right? We like to build walls, right, to keep ourselves in. We're not there to expand. And when an average person looks at that, they're like, yeah, of course they built the Great Wall of China. Forget the Great Wall of China. What were they doing inside of the wall? They were killing each other. Why did they have the wall? Because they got invaded. But on the other end, they were invading the areas which are today the Central Asian areas of Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, East Turkestan. They were actively invading. Why is it the Abbasids had to fight them? Why is it Umayyads had to fight them? Why is it that other empires had to fight them? Because they were expansionist. Look what they're doing in India, right? The India-China border. Now, as Muslims, you know, where do we stand? That's a different topic. They look at the agreement India and China had. The agreement was, don't bring weapons to the battlefield, right? So just talk to each other. They bought literally these baseball bat type things with nails, right? So they stuck to the letter of the law, but not the spirit of the law. And what we need to understand is they're extremely smart, extremely intelligent. And if anybody believes the type of stories which are coming out with a particular white person saying, yeah, China's perfectly fine, China's perfectly great, everything's good, just ask them one question. Can they simply talk about Tiananmen Square, hashtag Tiananmen Square, put it online? That's all. They don't need to say whether it happened or didn't happen. Just next to whatever they're blogging, when they're in Tiananmen Square, just put Tiananmen Square massacre 1989. Anything, they'll get blocked. So I would love to speak to that gentleman and ask him, do you think you can go to Tiananmen Square and record a video or hold up the East Turkestan flag or Tibetan flag? Do you think you can do any of these things? And this is hypocritical, because it's not him. He's a white Western person who's getting obviously support from the Chinese government. He's not affected, but there's a lot of Westerners who'll actually testify that all of this is actually nonsense.
I mean, as you mentioned, Sir Pensa, there's another guy, Lawai 86, and there's Lele Farley. These guys were making money, and they even say themselves they would be making a lot more money if they simply just kept quiet or they praise the CCP from time to time. And I spoke with Lele Farle, a rapper. He raps in Chinese, American rapper. He had to leave. I mean, I just want to tell the CCP propaganda machine that if you guys have a bunch of white people speaking on your behalf, there's a whole lot of white people. So Spencer lived in China for 14 years.
Yep.
14 years, Chinese wife and everything. So don't worry, we've got our own white monkeys, so to speak.
So why don't we do this, right? Why don't we just look at something simple? So we have the border between Chinese occupied East Turkestan, and we have Afghanistan, we have Tajikistan, we have these other countries, right? Simple request. Why can't we just have a simple situation where we say to certain independent journalists of some sort, right? So we say to the Morning Crescent, or no, South China Morning Post or whatever it is, Al Jazeera, a few others. We can't say Al Jazeera is pro-American, surely. I mean, their offices were bombed in Iraq, right? Just get a few of these to come, get Talk to East Turkestan to come, get Five Pillars to come, get mainstream Muslim ones to come. I mean, what could be better? What could be better than for China, for once and for all, for China to show that actually we're only fighting terrorists. We're not actually, we're not actually against Islam. It's not forbidden to pray. It's not forbidden to do this. It's not forbidden to do that. Because look, China has a lot to lose by not doing this. It's a very foolish thing. China is essentially starting a fire in the hearts of 1 billion Muslims. That's what it's essentially doing. You see all these videos, all these things that are taking place. Muslims are very emotional people. What happens when a Muslim finds out a Muslim sister is raped, or her nails are ripped out, or someone's child's taken away? You think the Muslims are going to sit around? We're not a civilization that sits around. It's in China's interest that the Muslim hearts are pacified. All China has to do is take an activist like myself, take yourself, take a few others, take Five Pillars, take Al Jazeera, say, yeah, come down, speak to people, spend a day, spend 2 days, spend a week, or whatever. Problem solved. Right now, what China's doing is it's creating a fire in the hearts of Muslims, which is going to be uncontrollable soon. It's in their interest to do this, and they can't do this except by bringing in a random white person to make a video and for him to actually speak on a Chinese television. Why doesn't he come to Al Jazeera and let a Uyghur right activist speak to him? Why can't he go and speak to Sister Gulbahar or one of the concentration camp survivors? Why can't he do any of these things? I mean, this propaganda, to be honest, is better than the Nazi propaganda, right? It's more believable, but at the same time, it has the same flaws because it's up against hard data. You can't argue against hard data.
Yeah, with that, you mentioned Muslims. There is this notion, or there is this perception, and that laymen, like, forget Muslim majority countries or the leaders of those countries, that the layman Muslims are not doing enough. And I would have to disagree with that. I would say the Muslims on the ground are doing a lot, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel that whether it's the West or I don't know what it is, the voices of those, say, Sunni layman Muslims are not projected like, say, not secular, but progressive Muslims, so to speak, or say Jewish voices or other Christian voices.
Yeah, I mean, there's something definitely going on, and it's hard to put your finger on the pulse. It's hard to figure out what's going on, because at the end of the day, there are Muslims. I mean, many Muslims are very upset with what's going on. You'd be very surprised at how far and wide the narrative of, say, Talk to East Turkestan has gone, and the great work that you guys have been doing, and how other people are getting enrolled. I mean, just today, I spoke to Ali Dawa, and I said, bro, basically, I'm going to need you to be one of the speakers at the protests outside the Chinese embassy. And he was like, it wasn't even like a split-second decision. He was like, I mean, it was just like he accepted it straight away. This is the level of information that has gone out there. So you take ordinary Muslims like Muhammad Hijab, right? So he's on it. Ali Dawa, others. Anybody that I contact, I say, by the way, something about Easter. I don't need to complete my sentence. They know about it. They're on it. They want to deal with it. However, their voices are not being projected, and it's made to seem as if the only people talking about this is Western governments or Western media. But there's something important to highlight here. This oppression has been happening for over 70 years, way longer than even 70 years. But on the minimum, we can say from 1949 till now, it's the worst it's ever been. And there's always been Muslims that have spoken about this. I mean, I remember the first time I came across something about East Turkestan was maybe 15 years ago on a website, right? And funnily enough, it was actually Harun Yahya's website, right? He actually was doing some stuff about East Turkestan. So, you know, this stuff has been out there for years. So it's not the case that, oh, America is speaking about it, Western journalists are speaking about it, all right, Arsalan, Subboor, you jump on the bandwagon. No, we would have done this anyway, even if the Western world was silent, right? And we need to understand that ultimately the loudest voices need to be the voices of Orthodox Sunni Islam, because that's what these people represent.
This is a good comment. He says that the Muslims who are speaking for Uyghurs are influential. Influential ones are silent. Would you agree?
I wouldn't really agree with that, because if we take an influential Muslim, like say Ali Dawa, right? So we asked him, like, can you do this, right? Here's Arsalan Hidayat's video. Can you put it out online? He put it online without hesitation, 100,000 views, mashallah. Can you come to the protest? He did it. Spoke to Muhammad Hijab. He said, of course, he did it. He's going to be one of the speakers. He also did a video with you. Spoke to Hamza Sotsis. He said, of course, and he did a video with you and sharing stuff online. He's happy with. Who else? Dili Hussein, again, 5 pillars. Somebody very influential speaking about it. There's many influential Muslims speaking about it. I would say, however, that sometimes we look up to a particular religious figure and we're like, why isn't he speaking about it? Why isn't this particular scholar? He's so famous. He's got 1 million plus people. You know, he can speak about it. But we have to be a little bit realistic, right? What country is he in, right? Does his government have an alliance with China? What would happen to him if he was to make this statement? His Twitter would be gone, YouTube would be gone, he might end up in prison. So I think we need to be a bit realistic about who can and who can't speak up and what they can speak up about. But definitely, without any doubt, there are people all across the Muslim world who are absolutely livid about this and who are not going to put up with it. They literally, they're up to their eyeballs with anger.
And for the ones who say the influential ones don't speak up, Numan Ali Khan has spoken about it, Yasir Qadi has spoken about it, Omar Suleiman, Dr. Zakir Naik. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't get bigger than Dr. Zakir Naik. Unless you are like a Muslim and you know what's happening in the Islamic realm these days, no one really cares about Dr. Zakir Naik. But he's the biggest name we have, right? The biggest da'i in everything.
Yeah, I mean, look at, for example, Ustad Numan Ali Khan, right?
Yeah.
So he is for me, he is the most influential Western Muslim for me, right?
Yeah.
The way I've seen things, and he's been vocal about this. He's been, I mean, again, I would add one thing though, you know, Uyghur brothers and sisters who may be thinking influential Muslims don't speak out. I would say one thing, however, the amount of information and then the amount of showcasing of the oppression, of the highlighting the oppression of what's happening in Palestine or happening in Burma or happening in Syria or happening in Yemen or Iraq or Kashmir is massively disproportional to what's happening in East Turkestan, because East Turkestan is the worst. There's wallahi no place on earth which is worse than East Turkestan. Wallahi, I swear by Allah, if someone can find me that, then I will bite my tongue. I will not speak about this again. Find me a place where 1 million Muslims are being indoctrinated to say La ilaha, to say there is no God. Find me a place where children are snatched and they're trying to convert them to atheism. I have 2 daughters. Imagine myself, right? So I raise up my daughters. I teach them Islam. I teach them Haya. I teach them all these basic Islamic teachings. And then I'm forced to watch my daughter being married to a Chinese atheist. right? She's crying on her wedding day. Find me a place that's worse than this on earth, and I will say, okay, fine. We need to give proportions here. I will say this: the amount of exposure of Palestine and the amount of exposure of Syria and Yemen, we need to expose all this corruption and violence against Muslims. But wallahi, what's happening in East Turkestan, you cannot compare it. It's a different level of oppression. It's not just killing. You kill someone, okay, someone in Syria is killed, someone in Yemen is killed, or Kashmir is killed, or whatever. Here, they're being taken away and not killed. They're being tortured and being forced to renounce their faith, and their children and their families also, right? It's very different. That sister we were speaking to the other day, Sister Frida, light bulbs on her, 1,000 watts, 3 days, no water, no food, and she's being interrogated. And she's being told to say that there's no God. And even in the winter, when they're in the cells, they're checking, are they doing any zikr with their hands? You will not find. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Israelis are very much humane compared to the Chinese Communist Party. And someone may be saying, how can you say that as a Muslim? How can you say the Zionists? Seriously, I'm being absolutely serious. Read up the oppression that happens to Palestinian prisoners or in the West Bank or Gaza. Compare that to the Chinese Communist Party. And what will you say? You'll say, actually, you know what? The Israelis are pretty humane. And that's a crazy thing if you think about it, right? But even a Palestinian brother, his name is Muhammad Habib, mashallah, he's one of those really good brothers who is on my channel a lot in comments. I put this up on Twitter. I said, this is something that you said, and I put it on Twitter, that if the Muslims of East Turkestan were sent to Palestine under Zionist occupation, they would think it's a holiday. And that Palestinian brother who follows what's happening, he said he completely agreed with it. He had no objection to that.
Yeah. SubhanAllah. So like when I see stuff like some Uyghurs post as well, they're like, oh man, like forget these Muslims, look at these Jews. I mean, I got no problem with Jews, but Zionists, like pro-Zionist people, oppressive people, they're like, no, these guys are our saviors. I cringe. But SubhanAllah, this in the next couple of months, the next few weeks, I have some interviews that are happening, and I will be the pro-CCP people that we were talking about are going to be interviewing me. And I think like it should be, I mean, they should understand if they're human, if they're not being paid, they should get it. That's why I've agreed to their interviews. And these guys do have an influence, like 100,000, 200,000 followers. And I'm sure we'll be able to have a conversation. And their main question is, America is using the Uyghurs. And I would say, yes, I agree with you. No doubt America is using the Uyghurs. No doubt Australia is using the Uyghurs.
But that's the genetic fallacy. That's a formal fallacy.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of the genetic fallacy for the audience.
Yeah.
You may be reading a comic book, and in the comic book or the cartoon or whatever, you see that a physics professor is talking about the Big Bang, right? So the first time you hear about the Big Bang model may be in a comic, but that doesn't mean the Big Bang is not a valid theory. So yes, America may be saying, look at the million Muslims that are being indoctrinated to become atheists. This was an independent nation. It should be an independent nation. They can't pray. They can't fast. Look at the oppression and the killing and the rape that's happening. Does that mean just because you might have heard about the Uyghur cause through Americans, does that mean it hasn't been happening for the past 70 years? Does that mean that all of the Muslims that were butchered and killed and they ran away to different places and they were chased out of their homes and their families? And you know what? Read Surah Buruj. Read those verses in the Quran which speak about Muslims that are being persecuted. Exactly the type of things which Allah is talking about is happening, yeah? You think we're going to ignore all of that just because Americans are talking about it? That would be the genetic fallacy. In fact, me and you here, we would be talking about this whether America existed as a country or did not exist, right? So this is the most ridiculous argument you can come up with. It's a formal fallacy known as the genetic fallacy. And anyone that comes up with it, they simply need to understand they're clutching at straws. There's no argument here.
Exactly. So that was my argument. Obviously, America is used, like all countries will use or not use accordingly to their self-interest, but it doesn't mean what's happening isn't true. it's still true at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You gave a really good example where if a murderer said that your house was burning down, you'd still go and check it out. You know what I mean? Like, it's a really serious situation. So with that, what we had voices like that come out. What else would you say to those people who, and like I said, their propaganda does work. People buy into this. Besides doing the research, the guy was saying he wasn't stopped anywhere. He couldn't film. He was never stopped he was able to film wherever he wanted. And clearly people can just go ahead and do their own research.
But the thing is, being objective means you never take one piece of data and using that piece of data, you accept the story. That would be injustice. You look at all of the pieces of data. So we have two theories. The first theory is that it's a grand conspiracy, complete nonsense. Uyghurs are perfectly fine running around in circles saying hallelujah or whatever these people are trying to portray, right? So the Uyghurs are just completely happy and chilling and loving it. So that's the first. But look at the data that doesn't fit. You may use one or two dots and say, yeah, that fits this theory. But what about all of the other data? The fact that we can from satellite see this, the fact that this was an independent country until 1949, the fact that Chinese atheism is something which is taught, and we have concentration camp people that have come out and testified. All this data doesn't fit. 99% of the data doesn't fit. The 1% fits. Okay, the second option is that this brutalization and oppression and rape and killing and maiming of the Uyghurs is taking place. That's the second option. Let's see if the data fits. All of the 99% of data fits. The 1% that doesn't fit, which is your story, we can explain that as Chinese propaganda. So in fact, it's 100% match. Our paradigm that this is happening for real, it encompasses your data, but your theory doesn't fit 99%. How on earth are you going to explain the satellite images or the journalists that have gone there or the Uyghur activists or your father-in-law? You're going to sit there, right, in the interview. You're going to be sitting there as a Uyghur with your own family who's disappeared, come back anorexic, and you're looking at somebody who's not even from the region and they're telling you everything's fine and people are running around and there's a rainbow and there's flying rabbits and everything's perfectly fine. You'd have to be insane to accept that story.
Well, what do you say to, I'm going to play devil's advocate. From time to time, these CCP propagandists, these white monkeys, they would pop up the images of terrorist attacks and say, this is the reason that China have opened these concentration camps, and it is their way of handling, quote unquote, the three evils: terrorism, extremism, and separatism.
Okay, so firstly, what we need to understand is this. In any city like London has about 10 million people, something like this, right? At any given moment, of those 10 million, maybe 0.1% are criminals. 0.1%. All right, chuck all of London into prison, make everyone go through his re-education because 0.1% are extremists. Okay, so that doesn't make any sense at all. Okay, if the percentage is small, and they have to acknowledge that it's small, then what you're doing by putting people in concentration camps, you're exacerbating the problem. You're making it much worse. So we've got extremism and terrorism. Now, as Muslims, we don't agree with extremism and terrorism. But here's the third thing. Separatism, it's not separatism, it's freedom. Because East Turkestan was an independent nation, was invaded. They're Uyghurs. They're not Han Chinese. They don't speak Chinese. Look at them. They're eating Turkic type food. They have Arabic script. You think those people want to be ruled by Chinese, Han Chinese people? So separatism is not a crime. And if you think it's a crime, then that clearly shows that you don't understand the history of the region. The Uyghurs have been in that region for 4,000 years. They've been Muslim. At one point, they gave allegiance to the Ottomans. Look at the countries around them. Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, all of these stans, and there has to be a Uyghurstan. Now, for them to deny that and to just say separatism is a crime. Well, why is separatism a crime? Weren't the Chinese crying about the Japanese invasion and they were fighting for their freedom? That was freedom, wasn't it? In World War II, when they were being occupied, Nanking and all these places that were being butchered by the Japanese, those Chinese were freedom fighters because they were fighting for their land. What's wrong with the East Turkestanis fighting for their land? What's wrong with the Uyghurs basically saying, democratically saying, this is our land, the land of our forefathers, the land which is holy to us, and a land which we have a linguistic, a cultural, a heritage which goes back thousands of years, and we don't want your Sinhalese culture to come here. We don't want, just like in Northern Ireland, all these plantations that are happening, this colonial type of thinking, just chucking loads and loads of Han Chinese people being able to marry our Uyghur sisters, and in fact, advertise. You see them advertising, yeah? Come to Xinjiang, you'll get this, you'll get that. A Chinese Han man takes a Uyghur sister and then he prostitutes her, right? And says, come enjoy her and stuff like this. We don't want that disgusting stuff, right? We're Muslims, we believe in La ilaha illallah. You don't believe in God, stay in your own land. We have our land. Our land is the land of the kalama and we want it to be pure. We don't want your nonsense in our land. And our land is going to be free whether you like it or not. And it's just a matter of time. They're going to do it the easy way or the hard way. And it's better that you actually allow for a democratic, for an open referendum, and you simply say, okay, you guys don't want to stay with us? Don't stay with us. That's the best thing you could do. What they're doing right now, everything China's doing right now, is only making the situation a million times worse, and they're poking a sleeping lion. The Muslim Ummah is not going to take this.
That's a very good point. Many are saying countries like Saudi Arabia, these Muslim, I don't like to call them Islamic countries or Muslim countries. I like to call them Muslim majority countries. The leaders of these countries are not speaking up. Is there any ayat from Quran, like what obvious, I mean, it's an obvious question, but what can these people expect if they die on this?
You know, a particular narration of the Prophet ﷺ comes to mind, which is speaking the word of truth to a tyrant is a great jihad, or the greatest jihad, something like this, right? Yeah. Speaking the word of truth. This isn't fighting. This is speaking the word of truth. Now, what is it about a tyrant? A tyrant gives you pain and pleasure, says to you, like Pharaoh did, you obey me, you'll be part of my inner circle. You disobey me, I will crucify you. That's what's happening with the Chinese. The Chinese, they are coming forward and they're saying, here we go, we've got some bread. Would you like some bread? Yeah. And if you don't get a bread, then, you know, I have a stick. So it's either a stick or a bread. So you decide, right? And people are like, oh, okay, I'll have some bread, steamed bread, please. And that's fine. Yeah. So people are scared. People are scared of basically saying, no, we're not going to have that. But the fact is, the Muslims are not going to take this. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. China can do what it likes politically, it can do whatever it likes. Muslims are not going to be quiet about this. We're not going to be like, are Muslims quiet about Palestine? Are they quiet about Palestine? My humble aim, using my limited influence, is I want just 5%, even though there should be much more exposure to East Turkestan than there is to Palestine because of the level of oppression. I just want 5% of the limelight of not the limelight of the focus of the Muslim Ummah on East Turkestan, and it's game over. Ban Chinese products. Forget Huawei, forget TikTok, forget Zoom. Stop buying their products. Stop trading with them. Make life difficult for them economically. Say to them, we're going to boycott you, and you don't have to break the law of your country. None of us are advocating any type of violence or breaking the law. What we're saying is use the means that you have in your country. Do protests. China is a narcissistic bully, and they cannot handle the smallest criticism. And you know what's amazing? One of the aspects of being a narcissist is that you overreact to criticism. You overreact. Now, China could have said this. Now, we don't have camps. End of story. They say we don't have camps. Then they do 1,000 documentary type things, or getting this white guy, getting this. Okay, where you got to hide? Why are you freaking out? We're just asking a few simple questions. It clearly shows you are guilty, and you know that what you're up to is not going to be something that the Muslims are going to accept. This is why they panic. This is why I truly believe. And by the way, I just wanted to say something. The Muslims who are saying, oh, this is like a Muslim recently said to me, oh, you've fallen for a CIA trap, right? You've said this, you've said that. I just want to say something to you, yeah? If this was happening to you and the Uyghurs were silent, you'd be saying the same thing. It's just that it's you it's not happening to. That's the only difference, yeah? In all reality, if this was happening to you as an individual, you would be crying that the Muslim Ummah is quiet. So it's very hypocritical that people have this type of approach.
You know, we do all this talking. I mean, we do a bunch of these things. We advocate, we raise awareness, we do hashtags. And I don't see the West actually taking, you know how they call for action? What they mean by action is, my perception is military intervention. They're not going to go for it.
No.
And I mean, as Muslims, like, we got to be careful what we say on, you know, on social media. But to be honest, you know, our Lord does give us, you know, the remedy to these things. And I just don't see this ending, any sort of positivity coming from this, simply by advocating an economic sanction. Because to be honest, China doesn't give a damn about what's happening to them with these sanctions and all this.
The thing is, look, the way I see it is, economically, China doesn't really care about its people.
Mhm.
The first victim of the Chinese government is Chinese people, right?
Mhm.
So I would say economically pressurizing China is the greatest strategy we have. And how do we do it? Boycott their products. And also, what we have to understand is their industry. You see, the American economy, right? The American economy depends upon a domestic consumption, right? People are buying, and the economy is going up, up, up. As people are shopping, it goes up. China doesn't have that. It has an economy depending upon trade. If people stop trading, they're going to crash. China has this massive aging problem. They have a crisis, a population crisis, in which they don't have enough people at a young age to support the pensioners. They have all these socio-economical problems. And many people in China are restless. The way I see it is, the best thing that we could do is economically create an environment where people are actively boycotting China. And I truly believe that that is something which we all can do. Because remember, in all of our videos, Talk to East Turkestan, everything that we're doing, we always tell people, stay within the law of your country, stay within your parameters. Don't go and even throw an egg at the Chinese embassy, right? Don't break the law. Just stick within the law. So if you can do a legitimate protest, do it. If you can't, social media, whatever. But I truly believe that economically creating a situation which is untenable, because what we have to recognize is this, is East Turkestan, which encompasses a sixth of China, 80% of the cotton comes from there. It's the main route from which they're going to be able to get oil and be able to get. China doesn't have the resources. All we need to do is simply create a situation where Muslim countries and Muslim population, it's going to take some time, they simply start shutting off China. Look what happened to Cuba. Cuba's an absolute mess because it's in boycott. You think we can't boycott China? China actually is very susceptible to boycott. And I also always say this, that we as Muslims living in the Western world, and there's a lot of similarities between the West and the Muslim world, which we don't share with the Chinese at all, the Chinese communists. So we should politically try to create an environment where we are in sync. So, for example, you have the Inter-Parliamentary Committee, or whatever they're called, right? They have liberals, Democrats, conservatives, Labour, everyone's coming together. We should be simply like going up to them and saying, okay, so let's apply pressure, let's apply sanctions, let's apply this, let's apply that. I don't think, because look, it's easy to say, yeah, you know, we should We should be able to defend ourselves. We should be able to fight. But let's be honest here. What do the Uyghurs have? Nothing. When they did, look at the Baron massacre. The Baron massacre, when the Uyghurs tried to stand up, the oppression got a million times worse, and they got massacred and killed. So I can see that you're looking at, okay, this option and this option and this option, but in all honesty, our best bet is economics. That is our best bet, and that is something which, wherever you are in the world, is perfectly legal for you to actually indulge yourself in these types of activities.
SubhanAllah. All right, brother. Is there anything else? Somebody mentioned about a protest. Did you want to give some information about that now, or we're going to do that later?
Okay, so in conjunction with a whole bunch of brothers based here in the UK, influential du'at and others, some organizations as well, there's going to be a protest outside, inshallah, the Chinese embassy in a few weeks' time because of coronavirus, COVID-19, the Wuhan virus, whatever you want to call it. There's actually going to be a huge inshallah, there's going to be at least hundreds, if not thousands of people there. So there's some logistical things we need to consider in terms of corona and stuff. But inshallah, this is something which I've spoken to many people about this. Not only are people willing to attend, people are willing to fund setting up the protest. Inshallah, we're going to contact the media. We're going to contact Al Jazeera, who are interested, Radio Free Asia, whoever wants to, BBC, whoever wants to cover it. Because at the end of the day, we live here in the Western world. We have so much flexibility in terms of the different tools we can employ to legally pressurize China. China is a narcissist which can't handle criticism, and we want to go gung-ho and have a large protest and create a lot of problems for them, right? Politically and through social media and whatnot. So inshallah, this is going to be upcoming in the next couple of weeks. Ali Dawa and Muhammad Hijab, they're going to be speakers, and also other influential du'at are going to be there as well, like Dili Hussain.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
All right, brother. Jazakallah khairan. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before I leave you? I think we're about past the 50-minute mark. I don't want to hold you too long. And you've basically turned into a Uyghur activist yourself. It's only a few months ago where we connected, and now you're equipped to talk about this issue quite well. I mean, what do you guys think in the comment section?
I just wanted to add to this that there's a saying that the one-eyed person amongst the blind is king. Yeah? So if I was a Palestinian activist and I was doing everything that I'm doing for the Uyghurs, I was doing for Palestinians, I would be, and you would be, a drop in the ocean, because you'd be like, there are people who are doing major boycotts, embargoes, they're doing this, they're doing that, they're setting up large protests, they're lobbying, they're doing X, Y, Z, right? They're helping Palestinian widows or all the rest. Because this issue is not really highlighted to that same extent, it makes it look like the work that me and you are doing is like really big, right? But in all honesty, it's just because there's a lack of people doing this stuff. And in the future, inshallah, we'll just be like, again, drops in the ocean. They're going to be people better than us who are going to be like, taking a type of action, I don't know, causing certain officials to be banned. I mean, recently, I don't know if you heard, Rubio, Cruz, a few other people have been sanctioned. Yeah. Right. I would love a situation, right, where, a big, well-known Chinese official is banned. There are people working on this, there's people in the background. They are, alhamdulillah, I mean, look, the way I think about it, they are really, really good, intelligent people in the Ummah who have very innovative legal ways of challenging China. We just need to tap into that talent. There's a lot of talent out there. Just today, there was a brother who emailed me and said about some particular Uyghur cause that they're going to fund it, right? And I just emailed you. I'm like, okay, here we go. Yeah. So that's the thing. That all came from a video that we uploaded yesterday.
Wow.
One person saw that video and was like, okay, and this is the thing, Arsalan, which I always tell people, right? It's not about numbers. It's about quality. So That video, last time I checked, it got 5,000 views in one day, right? That's not a lot of views compared to the millions of views in music videos, yeah? But one person said, I'm going to support that sister. Allahu Akbar. What more do you want? This ummah is an ummah of action, is not an ummah of words, yeah? So that's what we're looking for, inshallah.
Okay, Jazakallah khairan, Brother Subboor. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you, bless you and your family. I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us. Please continue the conversation in the comment section. I do look through them, and then we generally do talk about or raise those issues in our next podcast or show. I have been away for a bit because I'm on a break. I'll be going back, inshallah, next week, where I'll be a bit more active, more interviews. So watch out for that. Thank you, Brother Subboor. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah to you, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to my viewers.